Hello and welcome to another reel by Bharat Raghu. Today we would be looking at the Prelude to 1857. So we will be looking at what happened after the collapse of the Mughal Empire, basically after Aurangzeb, and how it led to the 1857 War of Independence and how finally British were able to establish their hegemony. So this is what we'll be looking at, and I'll be referring to the discovery of India, Jawaharlal Nehru's, of course, autobiography, and it's a very good history. If you want to learn, there's a popular series Bharat Ek Khoj in Doordarshan which came. It's also available in YouTube if you want to understand. So I'll be looking at page 295. This is the Marathas and the British struggle for supremacy. Triumph of the British. So basically now what happens over here, we need to understand 1707 is the date Aurangzeb dies. So we have looked previously at some of the the challenges that time, but after 1707, after Aurangzeb, the Mughal princes or the Mughal who became kings were basically not that strong, and they even at the time of Aurangzeb, his empire he had reached the zenith of his empire, and it was starting to crumble. He was waging wars at the Deccan. He was waging continuously wars, and that's why we know that he died in the Deccan. So basically the empire was like in its threshold and it was going to explode. So after that, that's when then the Marathas become a strong force and they start growing in. So it is mainly, you can say, under the leadership of the Peshwas, where the Marathas then go on and become a strong force. They start expanding and they go northward, and the Mughal empire is just basically a puppet empire. So it still has its power just in and around Delhi. Even the Marathas, they prefer having the Mughals as the titular heads, so that that gives some kind of a legitimacy. So the Mughals would pay a very, very heavy tax to the Marathas, and they still allowed the emperors to stay on just like as titular heads. So that helped. So that is one thing, and you can see this more in the movie Panipat. Ashutosh Gowarikar, very good movie, very historically accurate, where it shows how the Marathas under Peshwas are very strong and they have expanded to the north, and they have this Mughal emperor as the puppet. So what Nehru says is the real protagonists for power in India during the 18th century were four. There were two Indian and two foreign. The Indians were the Marathas and Hyder Ali and his son Tipu Sultan. And of course the foreigners were the British and the French. So there was basically this competition, primarily the Marathas. And then in the Mysore region, after Hyder Ali, of course, he takes over the throne from Wadayas, who were ruling from a long ruling dynasty. So Hyder Ali, basically, he was a soldier and then he usurps the throne. But he is a very able administrator, and his son Tipu Sultan, of course, there's a famous series, Sword of Tipu Sultan, made on this entire episode, which you can watch. So the Mysore region has Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan. There is the Nizam, of course, but the Nizam is mainly, as put by Nehru over here, Warren Hastings, writing in 1784, refers to the Nizam of Hyderabad. His dominions are of small extent and scanty revenue. His military strength is represented to be most contemptible. So basically he's kind of left it over. So what he says is to avoid being to submit even to humiliating sacrifices rather than subject himself to the chances of war. So the Nizam had given up basically of Hyderabad. So he was like in kind of alliance with the British. Now, so the only forces which were challenging the British were the Marathas and Tipu Sultan and Hyder Ali in the south. The Nizam, the Nawabs of course we know 17. So just imagine the chronicle of events. 1707, Aurangzeb dies. 1757 is the Battle of Plassey, where of course Nawab Sirajuddaula is defeated by the British, and the British are now gaining hegemony in Bengal and a lot of north part. So the Nawab of Buxar is defeated. So all these Nawabs who were basically kind of governors in the Mughal Empire and later went on to form their own kind of dominion. That's what the Nawabs were. they were defeated one by one. The Buxar, the Plassey, and then of course there is one event which happens which also disturbs the Maratha growth, and that is when Ahmad Shah Abdali in 1761 he defeats the Marathas in Panipat, and that kind of puts a kind of a setback to the Maratha dominion. But of course they still regroup, and the chiefs of the bigger states were Scindia of Gwalior, Holkar of Indore, and Gaikwar of Baroda. So these were the main Maratha chieftains who had regrouped. But the only thing is the Panipat defeat had kind of weakened them a bit, and the English East India Company now starts emerging as this hegemony. And so although the Marathas had a good opportunity to become a strong empire like the Mughals, rule India for a few years, but by then the British had come in. So it's not much of a period where the Marathas could actually have a very, although they did have a good expanse, their territory. Okay, so now what happens? So let's come to the prelude of 1857. Of course, there's the Sikh state, Ranjit Singh. That's what even, so we need to study the Sikh state as well under Ranjit Singh. There is Raja Jai Singh in Rajasthan. So there are these chieftains, there are these kings, but it's basically weakened. Now, so what happens is 1857. So before 1857 comes 1799. Another very important year. That's when Tipu Sultan is finally defeated by the British. So we should remember that there were previous Anglo-Mysore wars, and Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan had actually defeated the British in the previous Anglo-Mysore wars. So it's not as if the British just came in and they could. So the last major bastions in the south were Tipu Sultan and Hyder Ali. So the British had actually got a devastating defeat in the hands of Hyder and Tipu. But finally in 1799, the Tipu Sultan of Mysore, he was trying to be strategic, trying to make alliances. He had sent out envoys to the Marathas, as it's written, to the Nizam, to the Shuja-ud-Dawla of Awadh. Also, he sent in international emissaries. He wanted to rope in the French to say defeat the British. So he was trying to make alliance. He even sent envoys to the Ottoman Empire. That's another interesting thing. The Ottoman, all strong Ottoman Empire. So basically these gunpowder empires of the 1400, 1500, 16. The Ottoman Empire in Turkey, which had of course expanded. It was one of the largest empires in the Asia, in Asia, and even went to Europe. The Mughals. So they all were declined. They had declined around the same time. So Ottomans were also receding. The World War, of course, we know the First World War puts an end to the Ottoman Sultanate. So, but yeah, Tipu was also trying to send emissaries to the Ottomans to recognize his state, and so he was trying to form alliance, but it's too late. The British defeated him. 1799, nail. That's the nail in the coffin. Who's left? The Marathas are defeated. Anglo-Maratha wars, they are defeated. So now 1857, by the time it comes, I'm not going into what caused the first war of independence, as it's called. It was more the context I'm trying to explain. Who were left? Rani Lakshmi Bai. She was, of course, one of the Maratha chieftains. Tantia Tope, Nana Sahib. So these were the leftover Maratha chieftains. And there was, of course, the Mughal titular leader, Bahadur Shah Zafar, in Delhi. So what they thought is, let's strike an alliance between all the leftover, basically, chieftains, and try to form a kind of a loose alliance and then challenge the British. But it was too late. The British were much more advanced in technology. They had these new guns, which basically, and these old chieftains, the kings were using old outdated cannons. So they were not united. So basically that was the nail in the coffin, and 1857, the East India Company formally establishes control all over India. That's the prelude to 1857. So just remember, friends, from 1707 to India being like under the Mughal state, a very strong state, and the GDP was very high. India's contribution to the world GDP was very high under the Mughal. To another next 100 years or so, it all disintegrates, and that leads to the 1857 and the British hegemony. Hope you like this prelude, how it works, and do subscribe for further videos. Thanks.